And we start the afternoon session. Please take your seats. Okay, ladies, gentlemen, good afternoon. I hope you have had a good lunch. I'm sure that you have gone through very fruitful deliberations in your breakout sessions. Now it is time to come to the next session, which will be the plenary. Normally, what is next after breakout sessions? Now I'm calling upon Brenda, who will be moderating this session, to come in. Brenda, please.
Thank you, Joseph. I'd like to invite the rapporteurs that are present. Rapporteurs from the groups. I understand Group C, the rapporteur for Group C is here. Okay, they're still doing some refinements. I'm not so sure we are able to project from your laptop, colleagues. You just wait. Colleagues, are you able to project? Or he should send it to you? Just send from your email. Yeah, while he's presenting, he can already send it. He can start while they are waiting to project it. Mm-hmm. So apart from Group C, do we have rapporteurs from Group A and Group B? And Group D? I think the groups are still discussing out there. But could I request you help us to follow up with the groups that are not yet here? We don't have Group A, we don't have Group B. And maybe you can come and help inform us how much time they'll need before they can join. Thank you very much. Let me know when you're ready. Are you ready now? Okay, colleagues that are helping us to project the presentation, if you're not yet ready, we will start. Can we wait a minute or we start? Yes? You start now? I hear 5 minutes here, 5 minutes for other groups? 5 minutes for group A. So while you're refining, we can start with group C. So you have more than 5 minutes. Okay. A minute is over.
It's about needs, but would be with the season.
So that's what we're missing.
There's no one, but I see some people playing.
Like this, that they come to us. So okay. Okay. As we are setting up for the first presentation, could I request the rapporteurs for the other breakout sessions to please provide your PowerPoint presentations to our colleagues in communications there, so that when you come on, we don't lose time. But if any of the rapporteurs do not wish to project their presentation, that will be okay. You can just speak to it, though it is preferable that you project it. Okay. You can wait. Just give it to him. No, give it to him. This is his personal laptop. Give him. Yes. Hello? Give him. Okay, yes. Okay, colleagues in communication, please, we are really behind schedule. Do let us know if we can proceed without sharing. Okay, finally, we can proceed. So just a quick reminder to our rapporteurs. Yeah, first, I have to congratulate all the breakout sessions for being able to at least finalize the discussions. I know they may not have been as final as you'd have loved them to do. Some groups would have wanted more time, but we are pressed for time, but it's great that you could come up with the summaries. So each group is going to be given 7 minutes in which to present. There could be flexibility to allow for 8 minutes, and thereafter we'll allow for questions and answers for discussion. So each group will have a max of 15 minutes or so that we're able to finalize the presentations and give opportunity to the discussions for this important session. So you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for the opportunity. Good afternoon. And I hope we have enjoyed the lunch and the hospitality of Trademark Hotel. This is a presentation from Group C. And as the moderator has just noted, all the group actually never had enough time to fine tune most of their experience in terms of strategies learned. So I'm just going to take you briefly based on the time frame allocated to our group. And if there is anything later, our group will come and add. I'm not going to, this is the outline, which is common, I think, to all of the groups. I'm not going to go through. I'll go straight to the countries in Group C. They are there listed. Not going to mention them. You can see for yourself. On the implementation strategies, looking at the experience from countries that are already implementing the AfCFTA strategy, and those that validated the strategy, and those that are in the process of finalizing the validation. These are some of the strategies and some of the experience that have been learned. The first of it is the desk review policy. During the drafting of the AfCFTA strategy, we had different partner states giving their own experience, but we have condensed them into one, and we are not going to mention which state actually said what. But these are what all the state under Group C have said. There was a desk review in data collection in order to come up with the strategy. And before the strategy was actually, we find that some partner states actually look into the clarity of the objectives of the AfCFTA before they even develop their own. And also they conducted the in-house conceptualization across different line institutions that are related and are concerned with the implementation of the AfCFTA. Some partner states also did bilateral discussion with UNECA, and in this case, Sierra Leone is mentioned, and also with the support from the UNDP. In the case of Uganda, they consulted the development partners, and this is the same with other countries that are not mentioned here, because if you look at the drafting of the AfCFTA implementation strategies, most were actually supported by the development partners, the UNECA, the UNDP, and maybe the ITC, if there are other partner states and other institutions that I have not mentioned. So most were actually supported by the development partners. The methodology also was involving the consultation of all the key stakeholders from the private sector, the civil society, traditional leaders, academia, in the case of Sierra Leone, Uganda and South Sudan, and the same to other countries like Namibia that are not actually mentioned here. Those are just some of the few examples. Some of the countries also did the concept note design before the validation of the strategy, whereby all the stakeholders at the national level were actually involved. There was also an in-house, in-house from high level of the government official to endorse the strategies, because without the political commitment and the involvement of the higher level of the government authority, the implementation actually become a problem. So it was actually seen by some partner states as critical to involve the leadership at the highest authority. But most of the partner states within our group have validated, and some are in the process of validation, and some are already in the implementation phase, like the case of Uganda, which I mentioned. Some countries actually look also at the issue of gender. In the case of Kenya, they developed their own strategy in 2021, but they reviewed in 2022 during to consider the issues of the climate and the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic on the strategy. So some of the partner states that had actually done their strategies ahead of time were able to review. And that is something that others have learned from them. In the case of Namibia, they did a consultation with NAC. They established the NAC, was set up before they actually drafting of the strategy, which actually facilitated the whole process. and also they align it with the national development strategies, which is one of the important experience we learned, that the AfCFTA strategy need actually to align with other national development program. In terms of strategies, institutional mechanism, an institution actually established in order to implement the strategy. In the case of Uganda, they actually have a sub-cabinet unit. They prepare a cabinet setup to prepare and oversee the implementation, which is interministerial, that actually brought key institutions that are involved in the implementation of the strategy. And then after that one, they have what they call the technical, the NIC, National Implementation Committee, which is a technical committee. That is the structure in the case of Uganda. In the case of the Sierra Leone, it's almost the same. They have the NIC, which is the National Implementation Committee, and they also set up the UN agencies that will actually help in resource mobilization and coordination. Secretariat, they established that structure. In the case of Kenya, it's the same. The NIC was launched, comprising of MDS, and also MIC was set up as well to support the implementation of the strategy. All IGAT, all member states have signed the AfCFTA. This is just an addition in terms of the strategy, except Eritrea, which is a member of IGAT, but is yet to sign the AfCFTA and ratify the treaty. If we go to the fitness for the purpose, yes, all the partner states agree the strategy that they are having currently are actually fit. There can be no other strategy better than that, what we have currently. Until we try them, that is when we will come back later in future and say, no, this one is not working and this one needs adjustment. On the issue of financing, yeah, we actually share experience on the financing through national budget. There was a proposal that the government actually need to put it into their budget plan, because if you look at all the strategies were actually funded by the donors and development partners, but it is actually the projects are government driven, and therefore government has a big role in terms of allocating resources for the implementation of the strategy. We also look at that the technical support from development partners is actually very critical in this context. On the role of the private sector in the strategy, we say the private sector actually is a very key and is the backbone when it comes to the implementation of the strategy, because they are the beneficiaries of the strategy itself. Government develop the strategy for create environment, but it's the private sector that do business, not the government. So the private sector actually are the backbone. The concept designed and validated by stakeholders. In this case, all the private sector, whether the Chamber of Commerce, private business union, trade association, whatever you have in your country, manufacturers association, all of them were actually involved. The media, the civil society, all have been involved in most of the partner state. Key challenges. The knowledge deficit was identified as a key challenge because there is lack of awareness, not only in the private sector, but among the public sector institutions. This has been found to be one of the challenge. And also there is issue of NTBs in the implementation. Most partner states are actually still struggling with the implementation, and there are a lot of NTBs when it comes to free movement of goods across our borders. The institutional problem is also seen. Most of the partner states have not yet established the institution like NIC for the implementation of the strategy, but others have done. We have the infrastructure gaps. It's another challenge because all of us can agree that in most of our partner states, we have the problem of infrastructure connecting one country to another, and you will find that even countries that are close to each other may not even be doing business. And I can give example on our case. Yes, the issue of infrastructure. It's not showing, but it's showing here. But it's moving. It's not moving? Because here it's a PowerPoint. Okay. Maybe the projection. Because here is clear, it's very good. Okay. Yeah, it's not moving. And here it's moving. Okay. I think maybe I have to move fast because, but I think they will be helping you. It's okay here. It looks fine. It's showing here, but it's not there. I think eating my minutes, you will add. Okay, I think I will continue. The technical team seem also to see this technology sometimes is not favorable. So I have spoken of infrastructure, challenge, across our borders. I was talking of proximity by other partner states, whom you will find that they are within the AfCFTA, but they may not even be doing business. And I gave example in the case of South Sudan and Ethiopia. We are very near, but because of bad lack of infrastructure, we cannot even do trade with Ethiopia and Sudan. So these are some of the challenges. Yes, very good. It's there now. And then the funding was another challenge because we found that the whole strategy was actually left to the development partners to finance, maybe with a few partner states, but most of it was actually depending on funding from the donor community. And this thing has to change. The government need to come in and allocate the resources so that in case of, because some activities need government intervention. On the issue of political will, yes, there is a political will. That is why all of us are here. Our government have actually committed to the AfCFTA as AU Agenda 2060. Lack of experience, yes. AfCFTA is a new thing. So it is actually new to many countries, whether in public or government or private sector, it is new. So there is the issue of experience is connected to that. And also the issue of lack of cooperation within the stakeholders in the particular partner states. You find that some partner states, there is also lack of coordination or difficulty in coordinating the implementation of the AfCFTA strategy within and the case of Ethiopia has actually just highlighted the challenges they face in mobilizing the stakeholders to bring them on board. The issue of competing national priorities. Yes, most of our partner states are very committed and have political will to implement. But sometimes when it comes to the national competing priorities, the government will prioritize other activities rather than AfCFTA. And this actually affect in terms of resource allocation. And you can attest that I don't think there are many partner states who have actually allocated more than 1 million or 2 million to AfCFTA committee to implement its activities. And this is one of the challenges. Most of them are relying on the donors. We have the issue of change in political leadership. This has actually been found to be a problem. And what this means is, for instance, Ministry of Trade, which is the lead agent. You find the PS is removed today, or the minister is removed and brought a new one, you'll have to start again educating that person to know the importance of AfCFTA. And this is actually a big challenge in many partner states. The key challenge continue, the issue of regional conflicts, information on trade, lack of platform for the availability of information, low trade volume, dispute resolution. We come to mitigation measures. We stated that there is a need for high-level political understanding of AfCFTA And also the government should also avail resources, as I already mentioned, and for the implementation of the AfCFTA. Other consideration, in addition to NIS, continental implementation strategy is very important. And also we have to look also the issue of security. You know, some of our partner states have some political strife, which actually impede movement of vehicles across our borders. And then there is issue of technology, we need to be adopted. Lesson learned, they are listed there. We have the need to review industrial policy, need for a specialized economic zone policy, building up what is existing at the moment for the implementation, on the legal and institutional gaps, digital economy in the case of Ethiopia, and a strong political need to drive the implementation. When it comes to the recommendation, although they are to be limited to 3 or 4, but there, knowledge sharing, better coordination in terms of financing, AfCFTA strategy should be streamlined or subsumed into national development plans, resource mobilization from national budgets, highlight of economic benefits, because politicians need to know the important and the economic benefit that AfCFTA will bring to their countries to support the implementation. Also the issue of the welfare gain, increase in the level of sensitization. And I think that is all, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you. Unless there is a question.
Thank you very much, Group C. I was actually about to give him a note that you have 1 minute, but no. I was about to give you that you had 1 minute. Okay, so we have heard the outcome of the discussions in Group C. And as it was presenting, I was thinking, since we are going to follow almost the same structure when it comes to presentation, perhaps we could just take note of those very specific areas where we may want to come back to Group C and ask questions, so that we allow the presentations and then we come and ask questions. Would that be okay with everybody? Okay, great. Thank you for that. So I will now invite which group is ready? It was Group A, which had asked for 5 minutes. And now they've had 15, not even 15, they've had almost 30 minutes. Group A, are we ready? Okay, so Group A. And did you share your presentation with our communications team? Because we really don't want to lose any more time. If you have not shared your presentation with our communications team, I just invite you to come and speak to your presentation on your laptop. So Group A. Group A, you want to present from there, or you come to the front? Okay.
Mes collègues, nous avons pris tous un repas chaud. Je crois que les gens ne dorment pas. Nous allons suivre la présentation du groupe A. Le groupe A, l'introduction. Le groupe A va présenter son exposé sur la conférence de stratégie de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. À l'introduction, l'accord portant création de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine a été signé à Kigali le 21 mars 2018. Le lancement des échanges a été fait depuis le 1er janvier 2021. Dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre, les États partis sont appelés à mettre en place des comités nationaux pour faciliter la coordination réussie de la dite mise en œuvre. Aussi, les États partis ont été encouragés à développer les stratégies nationales pour la mise en œuvre. Mais comment ces stratégies ont été élaborées? Dans quelle approche? Le mécanisme institutionnel, la méthodologie et méthodologique, les rôles du secteur privé, le défi rencontré, etc., etc. Telles sont autant de questions qui guideront le travail du groupe. Ce groupe était composé de 1. Burkina Faso, Comores, Côte d'Ivoire, RDC, Guinée-Bissau, Madagascar, Maroc, Burundi, Niger, Seychelles et UMA. Le groupe s'est choisi comme président la RDC et le rapporteur la Côte d'Ivoire. Avec votre autorisation, je laisse à madame le rapporteur de présenter les points tels qu'ils ont été développés par le groupe. Je vous remercie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Pour le travail qui a été soumis à notre réflexion, au niveau de l'approche institutionnelle, on voit que ce qui a été présenté par le Tchad, il y a des similitudes. Il y a eu le recrutement des consultants, il y a eu le lancement du processus d'élaboration, le diagnostic. Et le diagnostic a pris en compte la revue documentaire des consultations nationales des parties prenantes. Il y a eu par la suite l'identification des axes stratégiques nationaux, la prévalidation de la stratégie, l'atelier de validation de la stratégie avec toutes les parties prenantes. Pour certains, tels que le Burkina, après cette validation par les parties prenantes, il a fallu qu'ils partent faire un examen des documents de la stratégie par la Commission nationale de la planification du développement. Et par la suite, un processus d'adoption par arrêté. Ça, ce cas, il est spécifique au Burkina. Et par la suite, la mise à disposition de la stratégie. Telle a été l'approche pour la majorité des pays qui ont eu à élaborer une stratégie de mise en œuvre. Mais dans notre groupe, il y avait des pays, il y a 1 ou 2 pays qui n'ont pas encore de stratégie. Celui qui n'a pas de stratégie, c'est le cas du Maroc. Le cadre institutionnel, le comité national de la ZLECAf. Le comité national de la ZLECAf, pour certains, pour la création, il faut une ordonnance. Pour certains, l'ordonnance, ça veut dire que vous devez passer devant l'Assemblée nationale pour avoir le cursus des parlementaires. Pour certains, c'est un décret. Pour certains, c'est par arrêté ministériel. Voilà un peu comment sont constitués les différents comités nationaux. L'ancrage institutionnel des différents comités. Il y a des comités qui ont fait ancrage institutionnel la présidence, il y en a d'autres la primature et d'autres des ministères du commerce. Budget de l'État. Ici, quand je parle d'ancrage institutionnel, il y a d'autres qui sont rattachés directement au ministère ou soit au sein de certains ministères, il y a un département qui est dédié aux différents comités. Par contre, comme le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire, nous sommes sous la tutelle technique du ministère du Commerce, mais nous avons un fonctionnement, nous avons une structure dédiée à la mise en œuvre. Le budget de l'État. Au niveau, ici, le budget de l'État sont les partenaires techniques au développement et le secteur privé. Comment se fait le financement de ces stratégies, soit par le budget de l'État, soit par l'accompagnement des partenaires techniques au développement, soit le secteur privé qui décide aussi de financer certaines activités de la stratégie. Donc, ça a été comme ça, cette approche pour les différents pays. Le rôle du secteur privé. dans la mise en œuvre des différentes stratégies, c'est qu'ils sont premièrement membres des différents comités. Par la suite, ils participent aux différents cas de concertation et de prise de décision. Ils sont associés à tout. Ils participent à tout, ils sont associés à tout parce que leur mot est décisif dans le processus. C'est ce qu'on a retenu pour la majeure partie des pays qui ont eu à avoir des stratégies nationales ou à mettre en œuvre les stratégies de mise en œuvre. Et il y a la contribution au financement de la stratégie. Ça, c'est le cas au financement de la mise en œuvre de la stratégie. Ça, c'est le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire. Le Burkina également. Au niveau des principaux défis rencontrés, nous en avons 8. Il y a l'insuffisance de financement de la stratégie. Moi, je prendrai toujours le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire, me dira pourquoi, parce que c'est ce que je connais le mieux. Au niveau de la stratégie de la Côte d'Ivoire, ça n'a pas été budgétisé. Donc, comme je l'ai dit tantôt hier, nous déployons nos différentes activités sur le budget de fonctionnement avec l'appui des différents partenaires au développement. Et souvent, nous co-organisons des activités avec d'autres structures, d'autres institutions d'appui au commerce, histoire de pouvoir partager les dépenses de sorte à pouvoir mettre en œuvre certaines actions qui requièrent beaucoup de poches de dépenses. Il y a l'insuffisance de collaboration dans la réalisation de certaines activités. Au titre des différentes stratégies de mise en œuvre, la stratégie nationale de mise en œuvre, il y a des activités qui incombent à certains ministères. Et il y a, par exemple, je prendrai une stratégie où dans la mise en œuvre des activités qui ont trait aux gens, ça revient au ministère de la Femme. Mais on constate que ce ministère ne s'y prend pas et il y a cette insuffisance de collaboration pour mettre en œuvre les activités qui leur est dévolues au titre de la stratégie. Voilà ce qu'on a voulu dire par là, par insuffisance de collaboration dans la réalisation de certaines activités. Je n'aime pas trop le mot insuffisance, mais voici l'idée. Voici l'idée, c'est qu'il y a des activités qui sont dévolues à certains ministères, mais qui n'ont pas encore mis en place dans le cadre de la stratégie, qui n'ont pas encore mis cela en œuvre. Et je pense que le Gabon a fait cas du fait qu'il devrait d'abord prendre des engagements, les instaurer dans leur plan d'action avant de pouvoir les déployer. Donc, voilà un peu l'idée qui est traduite par insuffisance de collaboration dans la réalisation de certaines activités. Le faible niveau d'appropriation de l'accord, niveau d'alphabétisation de certains niveaux. Ici, ça, je pense que ça concerne particulièrement la Côte d'Ivoire. Comme je l'ai dit tantôt, au niveau de la mise en œuvre, il arrive que nos différentes cibles n'ont pas un certain niveau de connaissance. Donc, l'appropriation s'avère un peu plus difficile. Implication du secteur privé. Certains pays ont dit que l'implication du secteur pays ne se ressentait pas. On sentait toujours une réticence. Et c'est ce qui est au titre des défis rencontrés. Il y a l'insécurité dans nos différents États. Il y a le manque de synergie d'action, comme je l'ai tantôt relevé. Il y a l'instabilité politique. Il y a le faible niveau d'industrialisation de nos différents pays. Il y a le faible niveau de productivité et d'infrastructure. On veut échanger dans le cadre de la ZLECAf, mais si nous n'arrivons pas à produire en quantité, si nous n'avions pas d'infrastructure adéquate, comment allons-nous développer? Comment allons-nous aller à l'industrialisation? Et ça, c'est un problème que nos différents États rencontrent. Et il y a le problème de changement climatique. Je pense qu'on a été quand même édifié ce matin sur l'environnement vert, comment créer des chaînes de valeur sur l'environnement vert. Donc ça, ce sont des défis aussi que nous rencontrons. Les leçons apprises, la réticence de certaines parties prenantes du secteur privé et de l'administration publique aussi. Ça, c'est la leçon apprise. Et en deuxième point, il y a la stratification des cibles lors de la sensibilisation pour une meilleure appropriation. C'est de pouvoir faire une distinction claire. Quand vous devez parler de formation sur les règles d'origine, il faudrait mettre en priorité d'abord les grandes entreprises et par la suite trouver des mécanismes pour pouvoir adresser ces mêmes questions aux PME, PMI, parce que ce ne sont pas les mêmes réalités. Le mécanisme que vous prendrez pour former une grande entreprise qui a une structure dédiée à cela, ce n'est pas le même mécanisme que vous mettrez en place pour former une PME, PMI qui n'a pas tout un département requis pour ces différentes questions. C'est ce qu'on a voulu dire par là. La collaboration, la collaboration, une attention particulière aux PME, PMI. On a vu que pour une réussite de la mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf, il faudrait accorder une attention particulière aux PME, PMI. Nous savons tous que la majorité des économies africaines sont détenues en majorité par nos différentes PME, PME. D'autres diraient 80, d'autres diraient 70%. Donc, dans ce cas de figure, il faudrait accorder une attention particulière aux PME, PMI. Et en termes de leçons apprises, il y a le faible niveau d'engagement des gouvernements dans le financement de la mise en œuvre. Et ça, c'était un problème qui revenait pour tous les pays. Le fait qu'il y a un manque d'engagement, un faible niveau d'engagement des gouvernants dans le financement de la mise en œuvre de la stratégie. Au niveau des recommandations, nous en avons 8. Et la première recommandation, c'est l'alignement des lois et réglementations aux engagements de la ZLECAf. Ça, c'est un véritable problème. Je pense que l'accord devrait être dans ce cas de figure également. Élaborer un plan de financement de la stratégie, prioriser le financement national. Si nous avons décidé d'être des États souverains, si nous avons des stratégies nationales, il faudrait que nos États soient à même de financer ces différentes stratégies et que l'accompagnement des bailleurs vienne en complément. Il ne faudrait pas que ces stratégies-là, le financement de ces stratégies soit basé en premier sur l'accompagnement des bailleurs, mais plutôt sur le financement national. Prioriser, budgétiser ça au titre du gouvernement. Promouvoir l'innovation au niveau des PME, PMI. Ça revient à mettre l'accent sur les PME, PMI. Développer des plans de communication. Développer des plans de communication ici, c'est insister encore sur la communication, s'adresser à tout le public. Bien vrai que dans le cas de la ZLECAf, il y a le public cible, le secteur privé, l'administration, mais la société civile, les jeunes, les femmes, ils sont tous des personnes qui sont parties contractantes à l'accord. Donc, il faudrait qu'ils sachent, de sorte à pouvoir mettre en priorité tout ce qui est produit sur le continent africain. Ça contribuerait aussi à la réussite de la mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. Renforcer les capacités institutionnelles et des comités nationaux. Ça, je dirais qu'on continue de faire le renforcement des capacités institutionnelles et des comités nationaux. Ça, c'est ce qu'on avait à dire à ce niveau. Et il y a la revue de certaines stratégies pour tenir compte des questions émergentes. Pour ceux qui ont des stratégies, il s'est avéré qu'il y a de nouvelles orientations à prendre en compte. Donc, à ce niveau, il a été proposé de faire une revue de stratégie. Créer des entités institutionnelles dédiées exclusivement à la mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. Dans certains pays, les comités de mise en œuvre sont rattachés au ministère. Soit ils sont des sous-directions, soit des départements de certains ministères. Et comme recommandation, nous demandons qu'ils soient exclusivement dédiés à la mise en œuvre, avoir un fonctionnement quand même libre pour la mise en œuvre. Il y a la mise en place de lignes budgétaires pour la mise en œuvre de la stratégie. La majeure partie des différentes stratégies qui ont été développées n'ont pas de ligne budgétaire. Et au titre des recommandations, nous suggérons qu'il y ait une ligne budgétaire. Adaptation des accompagnements aux besoins des pays. Cette partie s'adresse particulièrement aux bailleurs, de pouvoir tenir compte des réalités des pays que vous accompagnez. Parce que la plupart du temps, les accompagnements reçus sont orientés vers le renforcement des capacités. Alors que le pays ou le comité qui bénéficie de cela n'a forcément pas besoin de renforcement des capacités. Le besoin ne s'exprime pas en termes de renforcement des capacités, mais plutôt en termes de communication, ou soit en termes d'appui direct, ou soit en termes de certification de certaines entreprises. Donc, à ce niveau, c'est de pouvoir dire aux différents bailleurs partenaires de pouvoir adapter leur accompagnement aux besoins des différents comités nationaux et des pays. Dissocier le processus de la situation politique. Et à ce niveau, il y a des pays en ce moment qu'ils avaient la présidence de certaines institutions, certaines institutions de la ZLECAf qui ne peuvent plus parce qu'il y a des coups d'État qui ont suivi venir dans leur pays. Mais ce n'est pas de leur fait ces différents coups d'État. Donc, on a recommandé que le processus de la ZLECAf soit dissocié quand même de la situation politique pour qu'on continue la mise en œuvre. Développer des mécanismes de suivi et évaluation. Pour tout ça, on a demandé que des mécanismes de suivi et d'évaluation soient mis en place pour quand même après voir l'impact de tout ce qu'on a pu faire dans le cadre de la ZLECAf. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. some very profound recommendations there coming from Group A. We could see that it was really an intense discussion, but I also see some similarities in some of the recommendations they have made with those that were made by Group C. And since we have agreed that we first make the presentations, then we come to the questions. So now I would like to invite Group, we have C and A, Group B. Has Group B finalized their work? Yes. Group B, if Group B is not ready, then we go to Group D. Groupe B, vous n'êtes pas prêt? C'est le groupe B. Okay, so while Group B is still preparing, can we have Group D? Group D. The rapporteur for Group D, please. D. Yeah. Group D. And hopefully the presentations have been shared with our communications team. If not, then you can just come and speak to your presentation so that we save on time. I see many people standing, but I'm not seeing someone coming to the podium. Oh, I'm told they need escort. For Group D? Oh, thank you. So Group B, even Group B, we're still looking for the presentation. Group B is French. That's Group B. Okay, I think Group B, your presentation is ready. While we are waiting for Group D, Group B, your presentation has been projected. C'est vous qui faites la présentation.
Merci pour votre attention, s'il vous plaît. Thank you very much in advance for your attention. So, for sake of time, already the previous group has already introduced the purpose of each presentation. So, I would like to, if you allowed me, skip the introduction to say that this is basically the presentation concerning the outcome of Group B session. So the outline of my presentation follow the same line of action of each group. So I will first start by approaching the elaboration approach, the institutional mechanism, private sector role, and the main challenge phase, lesson learned and recommendation. But particularly because of the session, our group were to provide our outcome in French. So I will shift to French now to say that les résultats que nous présentons ici vont en droite ligne de ce qui a été déjà décidé lors de la décision de la 31e session ordinaire de la conférence des chefs d'État en juillet 2018 à Nouakchott. Donc, l'objectif était de mettre en place des comités nationaux de mise en œuvre et aussi pour pouvoir parvenir à des stratégies nationales de la ZLECAf pour renforcer le commerce intra-africain. Donc, le mandat de la CEA provient de là, de soutenir les États membres pour développer les stratégies de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. Pour ce qui est de l'approche d'élaboration de la stratégie de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf, au niveau de notre groupe, dans l'ensemble, la méthodologie présentée par la CEA a été suivie par les États membres et les REX pour ce qui nous concerne, ce qui a permis d'élaborer donc des stratégies nationales et régionales cohérentes et pertinentes. Au niveau particulièrement de la CEAC, une approche multidimensionnelle et surtout holistique a été envisagée pour prendre en compte un certain nombre de thématiques et aussi un certain nombre, je dirais, de secteurs de soutien pour faire en sorte que la problématique focale qui est de formuler une stratégie commerciale soit élaborée et mise en œuvre de façon réussie. Et cela particulièrement a nécessité, à la différence des autres sous-régions, la mobilisation de 9 consultants qui ont été impliqués dans l'élaboration de cette stratégie régionale. Au niveau des mécanismes institutionnels pour coordonner la mise en œuvre de la stratégie, dans certains pays, je dirais, il faut distinguer que certains pays ont adopté pour la mise en place des comités nationaux de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf, notamment au niveau de la Tunisie, le Tchad, le Congo, le Gabon, la Mauritanie, le Togo, tandis que d'autres pays ou régions telles que le Sénégal, le Djibouti et la CEAC ont choisi d'attribuer la responsabilité à des comités déjà existants. Les mécanismes institutionnels visant à coordonner la mise en œuvre de la stratégie ont été adaptés aux objectifs, sans pour autant oublier les difficultés de mise en œuvre et de coordination sur le terrain. Au plan institutionnel, il existe 4 mécanismes de financement, à savoir les ressources provenant du budget de l'État, les contributions des partenaires au développement, les dons et les legs de toute nature, et bien entendu, complétés par les contributions du secteur privé. Je passe maintenant au rôle du dit secteur privé dans le processus d'élaboration et de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. L'approche adoptée ici a consisté à impliquer le secteur privé suivant une approche participative et inclusive avec un cadre de concertation publique et privée. Le secteur privé étant le principal bénéficiaire de l'accord de la ZLECAf, il a été donc donné à ce secteur un rôle de premier plan qui permettait donc de faire partie prenante de l'élaboration, de la validation des stratégies et de la mise en œuvre à tous les niveaux. Au niveau des principaux défis rencontrés, les défis sont vraiment multiples. Sans les élaborer, nous avons mis l'accent ici sur un certain nombre d'aspects clés, notamment le déficit d'information et de sensibilisation, parce qu'il faut, je dirais, un partage d'informations pour une meilleure prise de décision. Il faut aussi la nécessité de sensibiliser toutes les parties prenantes pour pouvoir tirer le meilleur parti de toutes les forces vives du pays ou de la sous-région. À cela, il faut ajouter le déficit d'appropriation de l'accord et de ses instruments, tant au niveau des institutions publiques, mais aussi des acteurs du secteur privé. L'insuffisance de volonté politique qui a été soulignée tout à l'heure, nous la prenons en compte également au niveau de ce que nous avons constaté au niveau des pays et des sous-régions que nous avons passé en revue. Il y a aussi la faible implication du secteur privé. À cela s'ajoute l'insuffisance des synergies d'action entre les parties prenantes, les difficultés de mobilisation de ressources ici, que ce soit les ressources humaines, les ressources matérielles, mais aussi, je dirais, les ressources infrastructurelles. Il y a aussi le déficit de capacité opérationnelle dans le sens de non seulement formuler, mais aussi mettre en œuvre les stratégies qui sont conçues. Il y a enfin le déficit de chevauchement des mandats, non seulement au niveau même des institutions gouvernementales, mais aussi le chevauchement des mandats lorsque on se retrouve au niveau des sous-régions, chevauchement des mandats, étant donné que les pays appartiennent souvent à plusieurs communautés économiques régionales. Donc, pour l'essentiel, au niveau des meilleures pratiques et leçons apprises, nous avons retenu la nécessité de mettre en place une bonne stratégie de communication et de sensibilisation pour une meilleure appréciation de l'accord par toutes les parties prenantes. La dépendance des financements de nos stratégies nationales et régionales aux sources extérieures de financement. Pour bien comprendre ce volet, il ne s'agit pas de confier le financement de nos stratégies à des partenaires étrangers. L'approche inclusive et participative est déterminante dans l'élaboration des stratégies. Vu la portée aussi de cet accord, un cadre institutionnel approprié est essentiel pour la mise en œuvre reçue de la stratégie tant au niveau national que régional. L'identification et la formulation des projets bancables précis sont essentiels pour assurer la mobilisation effective des ressources nécessaires, tant humaines que financières, à la mise en œuvre reçue des stratégies aussi bien nationales que régionales. Et enfin, la nécessité de disposer des données statistiques fiables, notamment au niveau de l'économie des services, pour faire en sorte qu'on puisse faire ressortir clairement l'état des lieux, c'est-à-dire où nous en sommes, et aussi les options, les scénarios, et aussi pouvoir bien comprendre où est-ce que nous voulons parvenir en termes de perspectives futures. Donc, la problématique des données reste capitale pour nous permettre véritablement de formuler des stratégies qui soient des stratégies fondées sur des visions claires, mais aussi permettent d'élaborer, je dirais, des actions qui permettent effectivement de mettre en œuvre ou de traduire en valeur la vision qui a été clairement retenue au niveau de la stratégie commerciale. Et je voulais terminer par la nécessité aussi de coupler et de synchroniser les stratégies commerciales avec les stratégies industrielles en amont de tout ce que nous faisons comme stratégie d'attaque des marchés. Voilà, je vous remercie de votre attention. OK, permettez-moi je voulais boucler rapidement, mais au niveau des recommandations, si vous me donnez encore un peu plus de temps, j'espère. Donc, il y a la mise en place d'une stratégie de communication et de sensibilisation permanente. Il y a le financement en support fort des stratégies. Il y a le renforcement des capacités à tous les niveaux des principales parties prenantes impliquées directement dans la mise en œuvre des stratégies. Il y a une meilleure implication du secteur privé à s'organiser et à se structurer pour devenir des partenaires crédibles pour ce qui est de leur négociation avec les pouvoirs publics. Il y a aussi une appropriation de la stratégie au plus haut niveau décisionnel, la mise en cohérence de la stratégie ZLECAf avec l'ensemble des autres politiques économiques ou publiques, l'élaboration d'un plan d'action opérationnel de mise en œuvre de la stratégie et enfin, la nécessité vraiment de coupler les stratégies commerciales et industrielles pour qu'on puisse véritablement nous assurer de maximiser l'impact de la stratégie ZLECAf au niveau pays et sous-région. Voilà, donc merci encore une fois de votre attention.
Thank you very much, Group B. Again, we have very profound recommendations and insights into the lessons learned. And we still see some recurrent themes when it comes to issues of challenges that are being faced. The beauty of this conference is that these recommendations, looking at the representation in this conference, it's the focal points or the chief negotiators. So it is actually comforting to note that we will not just end by highlighting these recommendations. These are recommendations that we'll take forward. When we go back to our countries, we'll be able to at least influence some action. When I say influence, I do realize there's been mention of political will. So we can help at technical level to induce that political will. So we can now move to Group D. Group D.
Good afternoon. This is the report of Group D. And in preparing this presentation, we strictly followed the guidelines that were provided. Just to let you know, the membership of Group D, that was Tanzania, Rwanda, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Libya, Somalia, Gambia, Mozambique. There was also Nigeria. There were 2 secretariats there, both EAC and COMESA. So I was the rapporteur, and I'll be making this presentation on behalf of that group. I could have missed 1 or 2 partner states or member states who joined us later, that is Mauritius, and who else? And Seychelles. Sorry for that. So those two also joined us later. So this is a sequence of this presentation, and I'll be starting with the approach. Various issues were highlighted in terms of the approach to the development of the strategy. Among them was impact assessment, consultations with the stakeholders, engagements with public, private sector, civil society organizations, initial support from donors, very important, reference to national policy documents as legal basis guiding development of the strategy, cross-reference with the national policy documents to ensure alignment and coherence, sensitization and awareness creation to ensure ownership at the end of the day, a ministerial engagement prior to approval of document, cost-benefit analysis, and capacity needs assessment. So that was in as far as the approach goes. Now, on the institutional mechanism, there was some consensus in this. Establishment of the National Implementation Committee, technical working groups, example, the National Trade Working Group, the National Trade Facilitation Committee. In some instances, there was also the establishment of an interim secretariat to oversee all this process. Now, in terms of the role of the private sector, several areas were prioritized, seen as very important. One was involvement of private sector in all aspects of initiation and development of the strategy, because sure enough, the private sector would be so important in the process of implementation. So during the initiation and also during the development of the strategy, their involvement was seen as a priority. Issues relating to resource mobilization for implementation, because you need adequate budgetary resources to oversee the successful implementation. Also to enhance productive capacity and product diversification. So this was also identified as a key role of the private sector. Now, in terms of the key challenges, many were identified. Initial resistance by some of the stakeholders, not all of them, but some of them. Lack of full-time secretariat to steer the process, inadequate resources to finance implementation, and even the preparatory stages. And trade infrastructure, the lack of it, or the inadequacy of it would pose a challenge. Misinterpretation of tariff offers during GTA implementation. There was a case that was quoted of a country which did export a consignment to another country, party to the GTI, only to be told that their product was not actually in category A, but in C. So therein lies the challenge. There was inadequate productive capacity and product diversification, inadequate market information, connectivity to various regions of the continent. This poses a big challenge. Inadequate inclusivity of all stakeholders. Identified here were the women, the youth, academia, the media, etc. In most instances, the academia and the media are usually locked out because their roles are not really considered to be so important, but it is important. There are security issues, which obviously poses the challenge, sustained political will, currency convertibility. These two was identified as a challenge, and the lack of information on the liberalized products. Now, on the lessons learned, here too we had quite a number. Having a communication strategy in place is key to addressing information gaps. Peer learning among member states enhances interface and sharing of practical experiences. Mainstreaming of the CFTA national implementation strategy into national development plans, that is domestication, is one avenue to ensure domestication and implementation. Allocation of adequate resources is key to fast-tracking implementation of CFTA activities. Addressing political economy issues in order to specifically look into the vested interests. And this is achieved through involving and appointing non-state actors in key positions of the National Implementation Committee, which is critical for promoting mutual trust. Academia can be key in bridging data gaps and building critical pools of future capacity through strategic curriculum, and inclusivity in strategy development process as a lesson is key to promoting consensus and productive coexistence among state and non-state actors. So that is as far as the lessons learned goes. And recommendations, here too we had quite a number of them. The first one is peer learning among member states in order to be able to bring on board best practices. Member states should have in place communication strategy, awareness creation, and so forth. Need to incorporate CFTA agreement into national development plans for the sake of domestication. The need for allocation of adequate resources, the need for capacity building, human resource capacity building, institutional capacity building, need to engage the academia to bridge data gaps and build critical pool of future capacity through strategic curriculum. And lastly, need to improve inclusivity to garner consensus around priority areas. Now, among Group D, if there is any omission, maybe you could come in. I believe there's an opportunity to do that. So members of Group D, is there anything that I've missed out? I see none. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you for that opportunity. I think you have presented how that we deliberated, but I just noticed that there are also two things that is also key in the recommendation. One, engagement with the development partners, which we try to establish that UNECA has been very, very forward in supporting state parties' implementation strategies. And secondly, the issue of M&E, monitoring and evaluation, regardless of whatever will be designed by the state party. We also said that the REC should be much more forthcoming in the areas of M&E for the state parties. Thank you.
Okay, so with those two additions, I think we are now complete. The two are engagement with development partners, obviously for the need to mobilize resources and other support, technical assistance, and also monitoring and evaluation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Group D. And I think we should now just clap for all the groups. Yes, we have been given insights on all the key areas where we had guided that the groups should discuss. In terms of the approach, we have learned that almost all these strategies that have been developed, they followed a very consultative and multi-sector approach. We have also learned, or we knew, that impact assessments have been done and that there has been a cross-reference with existing national policy documents. And also that capacity building assessments have been undertaken. We also have been informed that national implementation committees have been established in some countries, and this resonates with the presentation that was made by the Secretariat, but it's not every country that has established these national implementation committees, but efforts are underway. And for the role of the private sector, there is consensus that indeed these are being involved. This was recurrent in all the presentations. And for the challenges, yes, almost all the groups have highlighted similar challenges. But just to highlight a few, which are also reflected in the recommendations and lessons learned, it was the issue of political will, which I had alluded to earlier, and also mentioned that as national focal points, you can influence that political will. And then there's the issue of collaboration. Then there's the issue of also diversity of interests in the agreement. I think this was mentioned by Group A. And limited attention to the small and medium enterprises. There's the issue of inadequate productivity capacity and security issues, currency compatibility. Yeah, it's really a host of different challenges that are not really new to listen to, but these are being highlighted as continuing and affecting the implementation of the agreement. For the recommendations which are indicated are actually address those challenges that have highlighted. Just a few which I picked was the need for regulatory alignment, which is almost always a challenge when it comes to regulatory alignment because of issues of different legal systems and of course, different interests. And you've also mentioned the issue of political will. It also does serve as a barrier to regulatory alignment. Then there's the issue of funding has actually been mentioned in all the groups, but here the recommendation was for development of a funding plan for these strategies and also promoting innovations for supporting SMEs. And the issue of communication and awareness, this was also raised during yesterday's sessions and also brought up initially in the high-level round table. And there is a recommendation for peer learning, which we are doing in this conference, and also the need for communication strategies. And what has been highlighted also is the issue of partnerships and monitoring and evaluation. This is very critical. And of course, there are many lessons that have been learned. I will not list all of them, but they speak to these challenges that had been mentioned. What I would like to do now is to open the floor to seek for questions. And these questions, I'm not going to be the one answering because, well, I wasn't participating in the groups. So I would expect the chair and the rapporteur to take the lead in either responding or identifying a member of in that breakout group who can respond to the questions that would be raised. So the floor is open. for questions. And if I may start, yes, I'm just abusing my position as a rapporteur, so allow me to start. If I may start, I had a question for group, I think it was group C, that had indicated a lack of experience as one of the challenges. There was no elaboration on that lack of experience. So if Group C could just explain what was meant by that lack of experience, in which area? Is it with the implementers? Yeah, so if I've mistaken, if it was not Group C, then it must be Group A, but at least one of those groups. Yeah, it's C. Okay, so that's my question to Group C. But maybe we could do rounds of questions. So that question to Group C take notes, then we can take other questions.
Thank you very much, Madam. The experience varies in the implementation process. There is experience in terms of the capacity to deliver. That's one. There's experience even from the private sector to understand the dynamics of the AfCFTA itself. And there is experience in terms of the coordination process itself. And this lack of experience also leads to a big gap in terms of information dissemination. What we are seeing here is that because players don't have a clear understanding of the issues, they're tempted to do the wrong things. First of all, you have to know the issues under the AfCFTA. From a political point of view, even the leaders themselves, if you deep dive on the issues, many of them don't know the issues. That's experience in terms of handling the issues are not there because they don't know the issues. And it's the same thing that drives down to even the implementers. They will tell you, yes, I've heard about the AfCFTA, it says A, B, C, but the nitty-gritties that do support the implementation process, it's not there. The experience in handling them are not there. And so that becomes an issue. And so what we are saying is that along the implementation ladder, there is lack of experience, and this is tied also to misinformation. Thank you. I hope I speak the voice of the group, please.
Thank you for that elaboration. Actually, just to add context, because we had RECs participating in these groups, and since RECs are the building blocks of the AfCFTA, my assumption was that we have actually built the experience from the RECs, but I do realize that the AfCFTA has come with its own dynamics. So thank you for that elaboration. So questions, please.
All right, Julius Corredo is my name. To Group C, I got curious a little bit. One of the things that you said was that there has been poor buy-in from the Ethiopian private sector. I found that to be more or less against the grain of most of the presentations that we've seen before, where there is a lot of enthusiasm from the private sector to embrace the AfCFTA. I just want to know why that is the case. Over.
Okay, we can still have, so Group C, take note of that question on the poor buy-in from the Ethiopian private sector. I saw a hand there. Is it comment? Is it? Yes, please.
Thanks very much. I have a question, then a comment. So my first question, I think, is for Group A. When they talked about reluctance of private sector, specifically they indicated in French, réticence du secteur privé. So what do they mean by reluctance? Because it can happen at several stages. And what are the causes, potential causes of the issue? Now, on political issue political will versus national budget allocation. I think across all the presentations, the issue of resource is coming. And it's also good to hear that the consensus is that the implementation of those strategies shouldn't rely heavily on donors. That is a very good point. Now, how many countries, if you have those statistics per your group, have dedicated national budget for AfCFTA implementation, apart from the normal budget for your maybe salary and others? So to fund specific activity related to AfCFTA, is there any country beyond probably Cote d'Ivoire who can share experience? So now to come back on the issue related to political will, what we have here many times is that there is a strong political will at high level. That's why a number of countries have now ratified the agreement. But again, what we are seeing is that that political will for ratification is still not yet translated to actual operationalization of the agreement. There are a number of issues that are highlighted, but I think it's also important if the goods, the progress also can be highlighted at least in one or two countries, which I think are still missing. So I think I will just stop there. Oh, my last point is on coordination. We, through our UNDP country offices, of course, partners, EC and others, I think what we realize is that the AfCFTA actions or the implementations of the actions are led mainly by the Ministry of Trade. And when we speak or we get requests from other ministries, we have the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that they are not always being brought on board when it comes to the AfCFTA. For instance, Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs, and others. So my question to chief negotiators and others, what actions are you taking currently beyond having the committee being set up to really make sure that you are integrating other actors, key players in the AfCFTA process? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are quite a number of questions. I want to assume the last two are cross-cutting. They are not just for Group A, right? Okay. So maybe we could answer these questions because there are more than 3. So Group A, the reluctance of the private sector in Ethiopia. What could be the cause? And also issues of budgets. How many countries within your breakout session group did indicate that they have dedicated national budgets? Group A.
Okay, that was not Group A, Group C.
That was Group C.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, as a rapporteur, I think I will give a chance to my friend from Ethiopia because that was actually a special case within a group. But looking at what other partner state actually presented was that private sector was the backbone actually of the whole strategy when it was being developed. They were part and parcel because they are the beneficiaries of this. But I may think maybe due to issues of mistrust or whatever, the right person to explain is our colleague from Ethiopia, who is here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the reason behind we are saying to low experience from in terms of free trade area, I'm saying because as all know, we are as in our history, AfCFTA free trade area is the first. We are the first time, so you can imagine the AfCFTA protocols have in number and the same annexes. So what we are saying, we are working since we are new for the platform. we are strengthening our private sector, our institution as well in cooperation. In many times, we are working for that matter. We have to assess our legal framework and the institutional framework. For that matter, we have done many things and settled many problems. We have done after this many proclamations, trade policies, and many strategies. For example, we didn't have the trade policy. Nowadays we have quality infrastructure and the development policy. We didn't have before. Nowadays we changed it. We didn't have strategies. So because of we didn't participate in the previous in many free trade area as other countries in REC, that one maybe has affected us. So nowadays we are moving forward. That is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethiopia, especially for ending with your intervention that you are moving forward, because now I would move to the cross-cutting question which Kome raised. It's about at least highlighting some progress, because all the presentations that were made, there was no indication of progress that has been made. And I know it could be a challenge to get all the represented countries here to now talk about their progress. But it would be good if the chair or the rapporteur would just give some indications if there's been discussions of progress and what that progress, which progress was reported in the discussions. Yes.
Can we, okay.
And we only have 10 minutes more before we can wind up with the session.
Merci beaucoup, madame, pour la parole. C'est le groupe A. La question qui a été posée au groupe A, c'était le problème de réticence. Madame, si vous voyez aujourd'hui le secteur privé qui doit s'approprier l'accord sur la ZLECAf, il y a beaucoup de réticences dans certains pays dans le secteur privé. Le secteur privé n'est pas encore à mesure de supporter la concurrence. Il y en a qui croient que quand on va libéraliser le secteur du commerce, ils seront envahis par les importations venant des autres pays. On leur dit, mais vous serez protégés par le protocole sur la concurrence. Mais soyez capables d'être compétitifs aussi avec les autres. Il faut au moins de sensibilisation pour enlever cette mentalité de réticence de ne pas s'approprier l'accord sur la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. Il y en a qui préfèrent évoluer dans leur pays sans vouloir accepter les autres, c'est-à-dire dans l'esprit d'une concurrence loyale. Tous les mécanismes, tous les instruments ont été déjà développés dans le cadre de la ZLECAf, mais il faut une sensibilisation pour dire aux opérateurs économiques que vous êtes protégés et vous serez toujours protégés par les instruments de la ZLECAf. Il y a la volonté politique. Madame, vous rappelez que la décision de créer la zone de libre-échange continentale, c'est une décision de haut niveau, prise par le chef d'État et de gouvernement. Aujourd'hui, au niveau de la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange dans certains pays, il y a la volonté politique qui se manifeste, qui ne se manifeste pas pour booster la mise en œuvre. Il y a certains pays qui aujourd'hui, on a ratifié, on a déposé les instruments. Il y a encore d'autres instruments au niveau interne qui doivent être alignés dans la loi des finances, par exemple les tarifs ZLECAf, qui traînent jusqu'aujourd'hui, qu'il faut booster, parce que ce n'est pas le ministère du Commerce qui coordonne, qui va aligner les tarifs ZLECAf dans la loi des finances. Il faut un autre ministère. Et un autre ministère là-bas Et ce n'est pas le ministre du Commerce qui va commander ou recommander à son collègue des Finances. Il faut qu'il y ait une décision, soit de haut niveau, du Premier ministre ou du chef de l'État pour faire avancer les choses. Voilà la volonté politique qui nous manque dans nos pays. C'est pourquoi vous voyez les choses traîner. Les budgets de l'État, vous allez trouver dans plusieurs pays africains, aucun budget ne reflète la part de la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange dans le budget de l'État. Bien sûr, on peut voter la loi des finances, mais encore le décaissement des fonds tarde à venir. Voilà, madame, et on doit dire que la zone de libre-échange, c'est d'abord une propriété de nous les Africains. Ce n'est pas les bailleurs de fonds. Les bailleurs de fonds ne viennent qu'en appui. Il faut que la volonté vienne d'abord des États africains. Voilà ce que je voulais dire, madame la présidente. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. So that was from which breakout session? It seems you were answering the question relating to coordination, because the expectation was that the groups would be answering the question on the progress that can be highlighted. Okay, so you're from which group? Group C, and you're from which group?
Thank you, Madam. I'm from
D.
Group C and
Okay.
I chaired the session.
Yes.
Madam, for us in Group C, let me start with the issue of progress. We had a series of groups that are already implementing the agreement. There are some who are still wrapping up the preparation of a national trade strategies. But one thing that stood out in the discussion was that leadership in terms of the political aspect of it was all agreed upon that the leaders were committed to the process. And that for us was progress. But the level of commitment was the issue as it was tied to budgeting. And so what emerged in the discussion was that there was need for us to tie our national trade strategies to the national development plans as a first step, and to encourage political leaders to have the AfCFTA in their manifestos. So once they tie that in their manifestos, they're able to drill that into their national budget, and then they can talk about financing. But some countries did inform the August body that already in their budgets, the national budgets, AfCFTA is already imbibed in the national budgets. And so for us, we consider that as progress. And the third issues were that there were issues of coordination. In some countries, coordination was now also aligned with the highest office, which is the office of the presidency. And that also provided a strong impetus for institutions to drive the process, because you would not want the office of the president to invite you, because you know what that means as a minister or as a government official. So those were some of the issues we realized that we are already driving the process forward in these countries. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Group C. There was a hand. Is it Group B? Group D? Group D. Mhm.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the previous speaker has alluded to some of the issues which were also highlighted in Group D, but maybe just to re-emphasize on one point which was certainly raised, specifically on the involvement of the non-state actors, especially the marginalized, the women, the youth, those who have a huge bearing in shaping the trade potential. So what comes out from this particular group is that, one, firstly, the involvement part starts from the strategy development element. And it was very clear that there was some level of inclusivity in that particular process of developing the respective strategies. So that was one aspect. Then the other issue which came out prominently was that most of these countries, in terms of implementation, this is when they are starting to implement. So in terms of quantifying meaningful impact might not be achieved as it stands. But one consolation, which was certainly there, is that the AfCFTA is not coming in a vacuum. It's a trade issue. There's been certain trade issues which countries are certainly implementing, and there are projects which are already complementing the interventions which may have been identified under the AfCFTA with regards to the marginalized groups. So you have the enhanced integrated framework, for example, with dedicated projects which aim to deal with both productive and supply side capacity constraints. And that's the case of Zambia. And this is also dotted in other countries, certainly moving forward. So, Chair, I can just leave it there in terms of the high level consolidation of what was discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Group D. And now, the 10 minutes has passed, but I will take the question from Tunisia.
Merci pour me donner la parole, madame. Donc, je veux parler sur la question de budgétisation, mais le plus important, c'est que le rôle crucial du Comité national dans tout ça. Si on parle de budgétisation, la mise en œuvre, le suivi de la mise en œuvre et les relations avec toutes les structures, notamment le secteur privé, c'est le Comité national qui assure tout ça. Je vais donner l'expérience de la Tunisie. Le Comité national de la Tunisie, il est présidé par notre ministère de Commerce. Mais suite à chaque réunion de notre comité national, un rapport est envoyé avec les recommandations au chef de gouvernement. Donc, pour voir les progrès, quelles sont nos ambitions. Et aussi, ce comité national, il est lié à une structure qui est plus supérieure, qui est le Conseil national de promotion des exportations. Donc, nous avons besoin d'un budget, d'allouer des budgets pour des actions, pour la mise en œuvre. Donc, c'est à travers ces recommandations du comité national qui passent soit au chef de gouvernement, soit au conseil supérieur. Je vais donner des exemples concrets. Cette année 2023, nous avons décidé au niveau de notre comité national de prendre le même thème que l'ASLECAF, c'est l'année d'accélération de la mise en œuvre de l'ASLECAF en Tunisie. Entre autres, le CPEX, le Centre de promotion des exportations, qui est la structure nationale chargé de promouvoir les exportations, a mis les fonds nécessaires pour faire des foires qui sont dans le thème des relations de la Tunisie avec le reste des pays africains. Plusieurs délégations d'hommes d'affaires tunisiens ont été déplacées vers certains pays. Donc, tout ça a été décidé à travers le comité national de décider de faire des actions pour promouvoir l'accélération de notre mise en œuvre de la ZLECAF. Et donc, je reviens, le comité national ZLECAF, ça sera le noyau dur et le cœur même de la mise en œuvre de cette structure. Et à travers toutes ces recommandations et l'implication de tout le monde, et je dis bien de tout le monde, parce que vous avez dit tout à l'heure que le ministère des Finances n'est pas présent ou ne contribue pas efficacement. Non, si le membre du comité national représentant du secteur du ministère des Finances qui est présent, qui s'approprie bien de cet accord, qui sait quels sont les engagements, quels sont les défis et quelles sont nos attentes par rapport à ça, ce membre du comité national va nous aider à travers son ministère à avoir les fonds nécessaires. Et une chose qui est très importante aussi, et c'est un mot qui se répète souvent, c'est l'appropriation. La ZLECAF, ce n'est pas seulement un accord, on doit s'approprier cet accord d'intégration, tout le monde doit être impliqué, tout le monde doit être conscient de la portée de cet accord. Je vais vous dire l'appropriation du secteur privé en Tunisie. Actuellement, quand on parle de l'initiative du commerce guidé, vous savez bien que la Tunisie fait partie des pays qui ont participé à cette initiative. Actuellement, le secteur privé tunisien nous demande quand est-ce que le reste des pays vont s'ajouter à cette initiative et quand est-ce qu'on va passer de 8 pays aux 34 pays. Donc, pour nous, c'est ça l'appropriation, que le secteur privé, maintenant, il est conscient, il est attentif et il suit en temps réel toutes les progressions de la réalisation de cet accord. Donc, c'est ça la chose la plus importante. Donc, je reviens, le comité national, impliquer tout le monde de son comité national, donner les ressources nécessaires à ce comité national pour qu'il puisse réellement faciliter la mise en œuvre de cet accord. Merci.
Thank you very much, Tunisia, for sharing your experience, especially on issues of funding and issues of ownership. And yeah, encouraging to note that the private sector in Tunisia have demonstrated ownership by participating in the GTI. And we do hope you can share more when we have the session on the GTI. Thank you. So I would have to bring this session to a close. Kwame, I know maybe most of the questions may not have been answered in a way you were expecting, but what I could note is that from the response given by Group C is that there is some progress. The issue is the level of this progress, and there is also coordination where countries are leveraging the convening authority of the highest officers in government. And also from Group D, it was noted that much of the progress is at the planning phase where inclusivity has been observed in developing the strategies. And also that measuring progress is a challenge because the implementation process is just in the initial stages. So thank you very much. And a clap for everybody.
Yes, thank you, Brenda, for championing this long session, which started from the breakout up to here to bring together the experiences from the different groups. We can see that it is an exercise which may last even for 2-3 days without ending, but end of the day, we can say that it is so fruitful and inspiring. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. It is a common exercise. And as you can see here, these sessions, as she announced, comes to an end. For today, we have one more session to go. And it seems that the coffee is served outside. I'm proposing that whoever wishes to have a cup of coffee grabs it, and we go immediately for the next and the last one for these days, for today, which is about translating CFTA implementation strategies into action. This one will be presented by Simon Mevel. Simon, tu es là? Simon, où est-ce qu'il est, Simon? He's around. Yes, I was calling upon you, Simon, to come up here for your presentation on translating the AfCFTA implementation strategies into actions. So again, whoever wishes to have a cup of tea, coffee, please feel free to go outside, grab it, and come back to follow the session. Thank you. So for this session, I want to be more precise here. We are allocated strictly 1 hour. So I will ask Simon to go as quick as you can, and I'm sure that you can make it. And the discussant, Million, you are welcome here. And I'm expecting you to do maximum 20 minutes, and then we give 5-7 minutes to the discussion before we go for questions and comments from the floor. To you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joseph. Good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, no, 20 minutes is more than enough. So we should be good with the time. And I just would like to have the presentation. There is a PowerPoint. Okay, excellent. So this presentation, the whole session is going to be on the GTI, the Guided Trade Initiative. Some of you may be very familiar with it already. But what we are going to do here, we are actually going to, we can actually go to the next slide, thanks to, excellent. So what I will do is this, you have the outline in front of you. I will very briefly talk about the GTI broadly, and I'm very glad that Million from the AfCFTA Secretariat is here, so that if I say anything wrong, he can correct me, but I'm understanding that he will be able to complement because I will be quite brief on the GTI itself. Then the focus of the presentation is actually going to be on a study, a small study that we did at ECA in collaboration with CAS. CAS, it's the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Foundation, their office in Addis Ababa. And the idea of the study, so I will show you what are the objectives and the methodology and the scope of the study. And the idea is that we were looking at early trading under the GTI initiative to see how it was going, what was working well, what wasn't, on very specific relationships. So let's say export of tea from Kenya to Ghana. And we interviewed all the actors along the chain to understand how did they go about it, what challenges did they face, what opportunities did they see, did everything work or not? And we tried to get a sense of documenting all the process to make it hopefully useful to any other member state that wants to trade under the AfCFTA. And so I will illustrate actually using a case, very specific one. So not export of tea from Kenya that I was saying, but I will use the example of the export of coffee from Rwanda to Ghana and tell you more in detail how it happened. And then more broadly, what were the challenges the most common challenges for all the people that we interviewed, and a few takeaways on the way forward. Next slide, please. So the GTI, again, I will be very brief here. I know that we don't have much time and Million will come in after, but the GTI was officially created in October 2021 and it was officially launched in October 2022. It started with 7 countries, but Tunisia joined almost immediately when the launch happened. So we'll say eight countries to start with, and a limited number of products to begin with. So I'm not going to tell the list. You will have all the presentations after. And it's important to note that, so it has been over a year now, a year and 3 months that the GTI has been launched, and it has grown quite a lot in terms of both the countries. We have more than 30 countries now that are taking part in the GTI, and the list of the products that they have been trading under GTI has also increased substantially. And it's there is even the question of starting with services as well. And maybe Million, you can tell us where we are on that when you make your intervention, so that we get a sense of where we are with the trading services under the GTI, if possible. And so the GTI was really to test the readiness of both, the governments and the private sector to trade under the AfCFTA, and of course facilitating ultimately the implementation of the AfCFTA agreement. Next slide, please. So these are very specific eligibility criteria that each country that wants to take part in the GTI has to meet. So you have 7 criteria, requirements. So the first one is you, of course, have to be a state party of the AfCFTA, and so you have to have signed and ratified the agreement. So that's the first requirement. The second one, you have to have a provisional schedule of tariff concession that is verified and approved by the Council of Ministers. Third, you have to publish your provisional schedule of concessions according to your own national laws. And you also have, it has to be also published and uploaded along with the rules of origin manuals on the e-tariff book website. So the e-tariff book website is running, and you can already go there and see where we are in terms of the tariff concessions and the rules of origin for the countries that have been able to publish them. The fourth criteria is that you have to have an ad hoc committee on the GTI that is in place. The fifth one is that you have to be willing to connect your businesses with potential traders or your exporter and importers between countries where you foresee trade. Then you have to also obtain the required stamps and authorize signatures from the relevant authorities, especially for the certificate of origin. And then the last one, you have to be transparent as much as possible on the non-tariff measures in terms of importing and exporting, the one you face or that you impose, that they have to be clarity there. Next slide, please. So now moving to the study, what we wanted to do, again, I briefly talked about it at the beginning, we really wanted to document the process of the first countries that have been trading under the GTI. And doing this based on their experience, of course. So the way we have gone about it, we had a desk review to really understand the institutional component and the laws. But then after, we also interviews, again, as I was saying, the stakeholder along the chain of that movement of goods from the government to the private sector and other entities that were involved in the process. Next slide, please. And here is exactly what we looked at. So I told you it's a small study because we didn't have the resources to go into depth in all the trade that has happened under the GTI over the first year, but these are the relationships that we looked at. So we looked at export of tea from Kenya, Rwanda, and Cameroon to Ghana. We looked at the export of coffee from Rwanda to Ghana, the export of dried prunes from Cameroon to Ghana. And then we also looked at the export of ceramic tiles from Ghana to Cameroon. So Ghana has been a champion, was willing to absorb a lot of the imports. But here we wanted also to have a case where Ghana was actually exporting to another country, and that's why we wanted to have that illustration as well. And here the table, very briefly, you have the category, A, B, and C. So A is non-sensitive, the 90% that needs to be liberalized either in 5 or 10 years, depending on the countries. You have the MFN tariff rate, which is the rate before start of the implementation of the AfCFTA. So if I focus on the case of export of coffee from Rwanda to Ghana, which will be the illustration I will be giving afterwards briefly, the initial tariff was 10%. It is supposed to be brought down to 0 in 10 years. And so that means that in 2021, the official launch of the AfCFTA was trading under the AfCFTA was at 1st January 2021. So in 2021, it went down to 9%. And in 2022, when we did the study, it was at 8%. So this is what the last column means. It's at what level the tariff was by the time we did that work. Next slide, please. So now we go into the case study. So again, we will be able to share the report. The report has been finalized. It has been edited, and now we are translating it from English to French. And as soon as this is done, we'll be able to have it on the website and share with everyone. And so you will have access to all the cases that we have been analyzing. But here I didn't want to overwhelm us, and also because of the limited time that we have, just focusing again on the export of coffee from Rwanda to Ghana. Before we go into looking at the issue, we wanted to look at the data and see, okay, what is the situation? How much is Rwanda exporting in total in terms of coffee worldwide? And you see that Kenya is the main destination of Rwandan export of coffee, and that's the only country in Africa that attracts meaningful amount of coffee from Rwanda. It doesn't mean that no one else is actually importing coffee from Rwanda, but it's really a very marginal value of coffee that they are importing. So definitely there is potential for market creation. It means that Rwanda here with the AfCFTA has a clear opportunity to expand its market in Africa beyond Kenya when exporting coffee. And the same, Ghana is importing coffee, but is not importing any coffee from Rwanda. And so that is really a new trade creation that is happening under the AfCFTA or the GTI more narrowly in this context. Next slide, please. Now, what we are going to look at now, it's how did it go for the company in Rwanda that has been exporting the coffee before they were able to export, then during the export process, and what challenges eventually they have been facing that we can report. So the exporter in Rwanda of coffee that we have looked at, who is the one that really was the first company exporting coffee to Ghana under the GTI, was Igire Coffee Company. And it's a player in Rwanda's coffee industry. And what is important is that they also support women. And the way they do it is that the coffee in the company is grown, harvested, and processed by women. So there is also that dimension that is quite interesting here. And that's through the entire value chain of the coffee production. So under the GTI, the company, before starting to trade, had to acquire a certain number of permits and licenses. So this is the list. They had to get from the relevant authorities in Rwanda the coffee export license, the certificate of quality, and of course the AfCFTA certificate of origin. They also had to get from Rwanda a phytosanitary certificate. And then from Ghana, because they were exporting to Ghana, before the exportation process, they had to get coffee certification. So this is a standard certification. And they also had to get permission from the Food and Drug authorities, so food and drug permits to be able to export an agricultural good to Ghana. And what the company decided to do to both hopefully simplify, I'm saying that because you will see that there have been a challenge after that came up because of that creation of that company in Ghana. So Igire Coffee decided to set up register a company in Ghana. And this was to simplify the import process from Ghana side, and at the same time to grow their sales on the local market in Ghana. Next slide, please. That was before the exporting process. Now, during the exporting process, it actually went quite well. So the consignment was transported by Rwanda Air at a reduced cost, reduced rate, and it took only 7 hours for the coffee to go from Rwanda to Ghana. On arrival at the airport in Ghana, it was cleared by the relevant authorities. It was put into the system as it should be. And then, as I was indicating earlier, remember the initial rate before implementation of the AfCFTA was 10%. And so they paid the duty based on the 8% rate that was applicable by the time that the consignment reached Ghana. So everything went well here. Now, next slide, please. This is where the challenges in this case were. 2 weeks after the arrival of the consignment in Ghana, and the coffee was already sold, the Igire coffee company was informed that, in fact, there had been a mistake in the valuation. And so they were actually given to pay the 8% duty without the inclusion of the cost of the insurance. And so they revised the valuation to recompute the duty based on that same rate of 8%, but including cost, insurance, and freight. So they were not very happy because they had already paid, they had already sold the coffee, and then ultimately there was a mistake, and so they had to go back and pay the difference between what they should have paid initially and what they were taught to pay at the beginning. That was one. Two, and this is what I said about the fact that they had set up a company within the country of import, is that because the joint venture, the company that they had set up in Ghana was located in Ghana, they had to pay additional taxes, domestic taxes, and levies in addition to the customs duties. And here on the right side, you have a long list of all what they had to pay because of that situation. So they had to pay the customs duty at a reduced rate, 8% instead of 10%, but then they had to pay a VAT, ECOWAS levy, and so on, a lot of long list that you have here on the slide. And we wanted to make sure, so we contacted the customs authority in Ghana to check, because we didn't want to publish something without having the comfort that this was indeed the case. And yes, they said that, yes, in some cases, depending on where the company is based, they may have to pay additional taxes, and the list is accurate. So this kind of undermined the benefit that was foreseen because there were additional tax that had to be paid in the country itself by the same company, but the joint venture. Next slide, please. And so this was for really the specific case briefly of export of coffee from Rwanda to Ghana. But then more broadly, what we see from all the people we have interviewed, from all the cases that we have looked at, is that they tend to be a relatively limited understanding about the export and import processes. In fact, many, and I'm not exaggerating, many were thinking that as soon as they would export under the GTI or AfCFTA at large, the duty will be immediately zero. They were not aware of the fact that liberalization is progressive and over time. And so they were surprised that, for example, in our case of the coffee from Rwanda to Ghana, the current duty to be paid was 8%. But some companies in other situations we look at, they thought they would be paying zero. And so there was that lack of knowledge about how the agreement actually is shaped and really works. Then there were not many, but in few instances, there were important delays in actually being able to get the AfCFTA certificate of origin. There were also issues when it comes to transport, logistic and connectivity. In the case of Rwanda, Coffee Rwanda, it went very well with Rwandan Air. But in other cases, it had to go by ship. It took much longer. It was costly and quite complex. So there were cases where we see that there are definitely a lot of improvement that has to be made in the area of transport, logistic and infrastructure to move the goods across the continent, as you know, obviously. And then it's also costly to get the required licenses, permits, to comply with the requirements. For the many, in fact, of the companies that started to trade under the GTI were relatively small. Not all of them, but most of them were small. And for them, it's kind of costly to trade. It's a new market opportunity, but it does have a cost. And many of them were actually having challenges to to finance the cost that they had to support in terms of those permit certificates that they had to acquire. Next slide, please. And so in terms of the takeaway, I would say 4 main points that are really strongly coming out. The first one echoes very well, if you remember what Prudence was saying yesterday, Prudence Abaizi from the AfCFTA Secretariat was saying that we noticed that under the GTI, if you don't have national implementation committee in place, it's almost impossible to trade. And this is clearly coming out. If you don't have the national committees that are in place, it's extremely challenging to be able to implement the AfCFTA. So that has to be really a key priority for the countries. Establishing your own national AfCFTA implementation committee is not the case yet. The second one is obviously the private sector plays a key role here. So what we could recommend based on how the private sector actors that we have interviewed feel, they feel that they should be more business-to-business networking among the AfCFTA state parties. So let's say private sector in Kenya that talk more to private sector in Senegal and so on, and that there are fairs that are organized. There is the Intra-African Trade Fair, of course, led by the AfCFTA Secretariat. But more of this is to be encouraged. That's the feeling of the private sector when trading under the GTI so far. And also there is need to build awareness and capacity building. I was mentioning the fact that there was little awareness of the fact that the tariff concessions had to be implemented over time. So just simple things like this needs to be going through, and that the private sector really understand what the agreement means for them. Then definitely better collaboration and coordination between the various entities that are involved in the process, whether it has to do with regulatory agencies, custom authorities, and other agencies that are involved in the process, and that should help minimizing the delays that we see along the way. And then again, because of the fact that many companies that are trading within the continent are small, they have issues getting the required financing. And so there is definitely something that has to be done here in terms of finding innovative solutions tailored to African firms to be able to finance what needs to be paid along the way. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much, and I hope I didn't take more than the 20 minutes.
Simon, thank you very much for giving us that very insightful presentation in the GTI participation in the performance so far. You have put, we are at the very early stage of this GTI, but I like the part that you try to look this performance from different angles. So it is a very useful and informative presentations that you gave us. Hopefully, the study, is it available online or maybe not yet? But it would be good if we also have the opportunity to have that study. Before I start my intervention, I have a confession to make. Even if I'm here to say a few words about the GTI, I'm not the one following up on GTI from the Secretariat, but I have been involved in the GTI mission. The Secretariat has conducted GTI missions in East Africa, in the Southern Africa, in Western Africa, in Northern Africa. So I was part of one of those missions to make sure that the AfCFTA national implementation committees are whether they are in place or not. So that is the confession I have. So I hope you'll spare me with some of the most difficult questions in relation to GTI. So from your presentation, Simon, I like the part where you try to show the trade creation and diversion part of the GTI, or at least the early stage of a trade exchange within the continent. And you can imagine after 5 or 10 years, what the AfCFTA will bring about in terms of especially trade creation aspect for other African businesses. So it is an eye-opener. Hopefully we will highlight on that, and we'll follow up on the data, whether it is working for African business or not. I think going forward towards my intervention, I have one slide to project. The rest I can just say it from here. And that slide is in front of you. This is a slide that the Secretariat developed. It was developed back in September. So perhaps some of the analysis made in here, they might have changed. But it was to indicate the formation of national implementing committees in the GTI participation. We were just gauging the readiness of state parties to participate in the GTI initiative. And I tried to display this yesterday, but I think this is the right time to discuss about it. On this slide, you will see that, and of course I have to link it with the presentation made by Simon. In his, one of the first slides indicated the criteria for state parties, for the criteria they have to fulfill to participate in the GTI. So we were measuring how state parties, whether they are ready or not, based on those criteria. So you'll find that up in the left corner, there are 4 items that try to explain the whole diagram here. The first one is whether state parties have complied with this criteria more than 4 GTI checklist or not. At least we found that 9 countries, they have fulfilled the criteria. I think you outlined like 7 criteria list, but 9 countries, that was back in September. Perhaps by now they have fulfilled maybe 7 of them. But 9 of them, they could fulfill more than 4 GTI checklist. The second one was 34 countries, which is the bulk of the state parties, where we find that they complied with at least 4 GTI checklists. So at least they managed to fulfill those. In 4 countries, they fulfilled less than 4 GTI criteria list. And 8 countries, they don't have the provisional schedule of tariff concession. So we cannot move forward with those 8 countries. So lately, maybe you have been informed, maybe it's around 31 or 32 countries, they have shown the readiness to be part of this GTI. Like Simon said, when we started it first, only 7 or 8 countries were part of it. So it's a very good news that these 32 countries will be participating in the GTI. So that was enough for the slide that was displayed. But I would like to share some synthesis that I formulated from the GTI mission we conducted to the different regions of the continent. So when we had the GTI mission to different state parties on measuring their readiness, I would like to say that there were areas or challenges faced. One would be by the by the public or the government offices, and there are challenges the private sector also shared to us as a challenge. When it comes to the government offices where we interacted, whether they are ready to be part of the GTI, they requested us, to assist in finalizing the pending provisional schedule of tariff concession issues. So, as you may be aware of, there is a modality to be fulfilled when the tariff offer is to be made. So that is one area they would like us to assist them in finalizing it. The other one is for establishment of the AfCFTA implementation committees. I think that one we have discussed it enough yesterday. And the other one is gazetting the approved schedule of tariff concessions. Even if it has gone through the approval of the Council of Ministers, it has to go back to capital and it has to be approved by the parliament. That's what the process of gazetting is. So that is also the other issues. I might have to also indicate that some of the forerunners who were bold enough to establish the implementation committees, you would expect that they will start trading immediately after. But they were not able to do so because the gazetting process was not implemented at the capital. So that was one reason. And of course, the other one was which is very useful for this meeting, would be that they were asking us to finalize the strategy papers that they were developing. So those were from the government office. For the private sector, because part of the GTI mission was also we independently visited some of the private sectors, whether how they look at the GTI. So most of the time they were requesting us for capacity building on AfCFTA e-tariff book, rules of origin, non-tariff measures, NTBs, and on the African Trade Observatory. So so we have taken note of that's how we respond to them in terms of capacity building. So 2 or 3 takeaways for this meeting is, I think what we have to know is this guided trade initiative is a temporary arrangement as far as we know it. So we shouldn't consider it as if we are replacing the full implementation of AfCFTA as part of being under the GTI. So it's temporary. Once the business community or the chambers of commerce or those exporters and importers, once they are knowledgeable enough to use the AfCFTA arrangement, I think we call it that is a successful arrangement. Then maybe that's where GTI may stand aside. The other one is the concept of the trade aggregating companies. Simon was mentioning that some, at this stage, the import-export happening under GTI is among small and medium enterprises. And that has created a challenge for, logistic companies, shipping lines, even financing partners. They couldn't, participate enough to it. So we are looking into formation of the aggregating companies at each state party's level. And luckily enough, as a good news, we have seen that Ghana has formed one, Egypt, also another state party who has formed aggregating trade company, or we call it AfCFTA trading companies. So they have signed a memorandum of understanding between the two. And we expect that we will see the same to happen a lot in the future, so that these trading companies will trade between each other. They will, aggregate the small and medium products, and they will export it to other destinations. So the first GTI was launched last year. The second one will take place in Kigali, Rwanda, in July this year. So hopefully these 32 countries or state parties will showcase maybe potential trade exchange by 1,000. So that will be a very good news to follow up. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think such kind of well-articulated presentation, as well as a so well-informed discussion, deserve another round of applause. Yes, I'm coming to you after thanking them. Just a couple of words. First, again, Simon, thank you. I was looking left and right during your presentation, and everyone were focusing to see what is next, what are those challenges he's saying, and so forth. Take. And if I come to Million, despite your disclaimer, it seems that you brought within the discussions a number of issues which are going to trigger more and more discussions from the audience. So with this, I'm going to propose that we take a series of 3-4 questions. I ask them to respond, and then we go to another round. But before going there, I'm wondering, Simon, is it possible, as Million asked, that once the study is ready, that you share it with the participants here? Because I think we will keep a list of them. I think it is possible. That's good. Now, let us go from right to left. Let me start by the gentleman over there. He has been the first to raise the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, sir.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Je remercie beaucoup Simon pour sa présentation. Moi, je voulais dire que nous avons voulu savoir quels sont les progrès réalisés dans la mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. L'exemple typique, c'est le GTI. Tous ces pays, si nous voyons aujourd'hui les pays qui sont les États partis, c'est déjà à peu près 40 quelque chose. Parce qu'ils ont déjà les tarifs douaniers, ils ont déjà les tarifs de ZLECAf, ils ont déjà les listes d'engagement. Alors, il y a des critères auxquels ils répondent. Mais si vous mettez les tableaux de ces critères, vous allez voir que si certains critères ne sont pas remplis, c'est par le gouvernement, ce n'est pas le secteur privé. C'est la volonté politique. C'est la volonté politique qui fait que certains critères ne sont pas remplis. Parce que ce n'est pas le secteur privé qui va publier les tarifs douaniers. Ce n'est pas le secteur privé qui va aligner les tarifs douaniers dans la loi des finances. Tous ces critères ici, c'est pour dire, comme l'a souligné Million, que l'initiative guidée, elle est temporaire. Elle est temporaire tout à fait. Si tout le monde remplissait ces critères-là, on va abandonner l'initiative commerce guidé. On va se lancer maintenant dans les commerces. Et faites l'évaluation. Quels sont les pays qui n'ont pas rempli ces critères? Qu'est-ce qui les empêche de remplir ces critères? Vous allez trouver que c'est la volonté politique. C'est ce que je voulais vous dire. C'est ça l'état d'avancement de mise en œuvre de la ZLECAf. Travaillons sur la volonté politique. Pourquoi on n'a pas rempli ces critères? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I will request the next speakers to go straight on the point because we have just like 15-20 minutes maximum. Which country over there?
The Gambia.
The Gambia. Please.
Yes, me quickly.
Straight on the point.
Yes, quickly. Once I think the study has demonstrated the power of trade creation that we have seen. and this is a positive gain for the region. What we also saw is that country may end up using internal taxes to discourage, CFTA, as we have seen a plethora of taxes and charges that has been imposed on the coffee that came from Rwanda. I think this is also a concern. And also, Milan, when he said guided trade initiative is temporal, how temporal it is? Because it is becoming like a trade based on reciprocity, not on MFN. And I don't think we could continue to trade like that if you want to deepen, integration, as far as integration is concerned. And I don't know how temporal, you are seeing the guided trade initiative. Thank you.
I have the third would be. I failed to see the country, but go ahead. Which one? Which one?
Thank you very much, Zambia. Well, I had a couple of comments, but due to time, just one issue. In one of your slides, there is a small note which was written saying the consignment were charged full MFN rates due to an error on the certificate of origin, stating the goods were of Chinese origin. Would you want to come back to that and just expand on what you meant on that particular issue?
Now, the Senegal, Sierra Leone, and we let them respond first, and we go to the second round. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the researchers, well, my name is Abubakar Toure. I'm not from Senegal, I'm from Sierra Leone, ENDP. Thank you. I think the researchers is laying the foundation for future studies, especially when I think the previous session we talked about progress. How do we assess progress going forward? But Simon, I wanted to ask, because you just showed the Ghana experience, and from one of the slides, it seems as if it's Rwanda and Kenya actually, that in terms of volume and value of tea from Rwanda. So did you have any experience from that aspect? For example, what obtained in Kenya with regards to the importation of tea from Rwanda? So, but having just one experience, do you think that's enough for us to draw conclusions that will inform future studies? Thank you.
We are here since 2 days, but it should be more practical if the speakers introduce themselves very quickly so we know who are speaking from where, particularly for those who are to the other corner. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I am Abdul Kamara. I'm from Sierra Leone. I'm looking at the presentation and we see the volume of taxes Ghana has levied on the importation of coffee. I would think there are other products that will face the same situation. Don't you think this is deceptive in terms of the picture we are painting to the private sector on AfCFTA? And what is the Secretariat doing to address these issues? Because it seems the cost now of the taxes is higher than even the tariff they're going to wipe out. What is the Secretariat going to do about this? Thank you.
Okay, let me ask Million to start and then Simon will follow, please. Even in the responses, better that we go straight on the point so we can.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony. And thank you very much for the questions as well. If I may go to the first question on the from our distinguished delegate from DRC on the political will. I think the political will is there, and it has been pronounced many times. If you look at the decision that's coming out from the Assembly, that means from the highest body in the African Union, they have been actually giving us, a homework, a series of homeworks to the ministers and the experts in terms of meeting a very tight deadlines in submission. So at political will level, I think it is there. When it comes to even GTI, the assembly in 2022 in Niger, they followed up the importance of GTI, and that's when actually the AfCFTA trading companies decision came up. So I would say the political will is there. For the question that relates to taxes, I had also the same feeling. Looking at the detailed, I was counting how many different taxes were applied just for that one export from Rwanda to Ghana, and I think it is around 11. And if we have a closer look at those taxes, perhaps those are the type of things we consider to be non-tariff barriers or non-tariff measures. So, in fact, during the last GTI meeting, more issues were also raised. So the director from on goods, on trade in goods at the secretariat, he took up many of them, and in fact, he has been following up. So hopefully, those issues will be resolved amongst the state parties. And also, His Excellency, the Secretary General, he's also always on standby to have this information so that he engages with the respective ministries at the national level. On the question of GTI being temporary, I think the objective when this GTI was initiated, as the name indicates, it's to guide the process of trading meaningfully under the AfCFTA. So for the question how temporary it is, of course we never know that it will be such important at a later stage. But the reason why I said it will be temporary, because once the business community created their own network, I don't think there is no business for the secretariat to be involved, unless in terms of facilitating. Otherwise, the business community, they are the ones to drive this process, use the legal foundation, and actually, access the markets that where they would like to export their products. I think those are the points I would like to make. Maybe the rest Simon can address it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Million, and thank you so much for the question asked. I just wanted before reacting to what was said, just to say that yes. As I was saying, the report is completed. It has been edited. We are translating it into French, and then we'll publish it. I think it's a good idea that we then send it to the entire group who is here as soon as this is done. Hopefully by end of January, early February, we should have the translation done, and we should be able to share the report. But it's done. It's concluded. It's just that as per our rules, we need to have it in both languages before we can really publish and disseminate. I just wanted to also acknowledge the contribution of 3 colleagues, important contribution to this work. Godfrey Walakira, Stella Mouchiri, who is here in the room, and Geoffroy Guépier. They also made important contribution to this work. So now, Million has already taken a lot of the question, and I will not be going into a lot of depth. We have limited time, and again, our role was just to take a look at what was happening, try to also understand ourselves, because there is a lot of things that we ignored and that we learned doing that exercise. So it was very good for us, and we hope that it will be very good for you. And so what I want to say here, I'm very glad to hear that we all seem to see the GTI as a temporary initiative, because what we want is country to trade massively, not being guided under the AfCFTA agreement at a massive scale, including all the state parties and in all the goods and services that they can trade into. So that has to happen as quickly as we can. But as you said, in various ways, there are issues here and there. There are issues because we notice that some countries do impose domestic taxes and levies. That was just an example. We didn't find the same in the other countries that we interviewed, but certainly in other countries that we didn't talk to, that may be the case. And that cannot become. We cannot create more non-tariff measures. If we want to eliminate tariffs, we also have to pay attention to domestic taxes and levies so that they don't come and offset the benefits of the AfCFTA. So there is a lot of attention that needs to be paid into that. Political will, certainly, but I think that's in your hands. It's really you in your countries that have to fight for those barriers to be eliminated as quickly as possible within the countries, within the entire continent. And then just also to say, I don't know if I have on the example of I think that was important because yes, I didn't mention it, but yes, in one of the cases, so that was in the case of export of ceramic tiles from Ghana to Cameroon, the certificate of origin was issued and there was a mistake. So the tiles didn't actually come from China, but there was an error that was included in the certificate that reflected that the tiles were of Chinese origin. And so because of that, there is no way that it can meet the origin criteria under the AfCFTA. And so when we interviewed the companies, they said, we were not successful because of that mistake. We had to go back and correct. And then we didn't follow up. We should follow up to try to see if that has been corrected and how it went afterwards. And then finally, just to say that on the issue of export of tea from Rwanda export of coffee from Rwanda to Kenya, we didn't investigate. And this is because this has happened before the GTI. And so our work was really focusing on the GTI itself. So everything new that had not happened before the GTI was what we were interested in. So I don't have information on how the trade of coffee from Rwanda to Kenya is going, how is the situation, how fluid it may be. I guess it's quite fluid because the figures are quite high. What was interesting in the table that I didn't mention, if you look at it, you see that there is an evolution from 2018 to 2021, and you see that it goes up quite a lot, the export of coffee from Rwanda to Kenya, neighbor country, during COVID time. And then you have the line of the US just below where it's going down in COVID time. So it shows that intra-African trade has resisted during COVID, and that is a good message, which we can even see from such figure. And just to say that at ECA, we plan to go beyond this. We really want to try to develop step-by-step guides to help you take advantage of the AfCFTA. Colleagues in the sub-regional office for Western Africa, Mamoudou is here, have been supporting Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Senegal, developing export guides under the AfCFTA, and they also help setting up online platforms where you can go, access the guide, and get detailed information. And we would like to expand that beyond the countries that have been covered so far to help you as much as possible taking advantage. So it was, again, very small study focusing on the early trade under the GTI, but I agree, this is small. We must go much beyond that, and we are hoping to do so.
Okay, thank you. Now let us go to a second round. Je commence par le représentant de la Tunisie. Next will be Madame from Eswatini.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai une question concernant les sociétés d'agrégation de l'ASLECA. J'ai une question concernant les sociétés d'agrégation de la ZLECAf. Quelle est la spécificité de ces entreprises? Parce que nous savons que dans tous les pays, on trouve les sociétés dans le commerce international. Donc, quelles seraient les spécificités de ces entreprises pour aider les PME et les artisans pour exporter dans le cadre de la ZLECAf? Merci.
Thank you. My name is Ketsue from the Kingdom of Eswatini. My question is on the differentiating factor of the GTI. We know that most of these companies in our countries, they already export into Africa, although maybe it's at a lower level, but we want to expand. So, businesses, they want to benefit from everything that we do as government. So we want to promote the GTI, and we need to know what differentiates the GTI from the normal trade that they are already undertaking. Thank you, Chair.
Let me come here. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel Mutahunga from Uganda. Mine is a quick observation to Simon and Tim. Looking at this multiplicity of internal taxes that the consignment to Ghana first, and bearing in mind that the CFTA is expected to boost our competitiveness as African countries to trade with each other, I would propose that probably you undertake some further analysis where you compare these kinds of markets, like what we have in this case, with the competing markets outside Africa. For example, if the company that exported this coffee to Ghana had exported it to, say, Italy or Germany, what would it have faced? Because that is very critical in informing the likely behavior by private companies in terms of taking advantage of the CFTA, and ultimately it would inform us as policymakers to know if, besides focusing on tariffs, we should also focus on internal levies and taxes or measures of equivalent effect. I thank you.
Thank you. We come to you.
Thank you, MC, for the floor. I just wanted to ask Simon. He said that the report is almost done and is going to circulate. And again, there was also a development from the discussant, of course, adding some of the information, especially on GTI, because we understand that the GTI has done in second phase. In Tanzania, okay, being one of the country which is also under, of course, engaging the guided trade initiative, and we have done a lot. And we have also submitted all the data to the CFTA Secretariat in terms of the certificate, the certificate of rules of origin, which indicating that we have exported. So we have done a lot of trade. We have exported to Algeria. Of course, all the countries which is not part of the EAC and SADC. We have done Algeria. We have exported to Morocco. We have exported to Nigeria, even the Ghana. Of course, we have some of the challenges which can also help your study, especially when we engaged with the Egypt, we wanted to export to the Egypt. We just found that the product which we are exporting to Egypt is a tobacco, but when we went to go through, it was under category C. So we couldn't export because for them it is an exclusion list. For us, we wanted to engage in exporting. So that kind of the information. So you need to find it a lot so that it will have a complete study. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is one more question, we can close this round. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I think the issue of the ties from Ghana to Cameroon, I think it's raised the issue of re-export. I don't know whether we have standards or protocols on that. Re-export. Thank you.
Okay, I will ask them to respond briefly to the questions. The questions themselves were straightforward. I think the response as well should be.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back to the notes to not forget anyone. So on the aggregation, I will leave that to you, Million, because this is something that you're better aware of than I am. What I wanted to say, it's on the issues of promoting the GTI, what it brings compared to normal trade. I think this is a very pertinent question. In principle, it should be bringing reduced costs and greater benefits. In principle, we see that there are caveats. Hopefully, as country trade more and more within the AfCFTA, as per the requirements, because there is need for compliance with certain requirements, that's going to improve and things will get better. Company will see more and more benefits and get more profits. At the same time, I think it's very important because there is a lot of informal trade on the continent. And so this can really make a difference in terms of bringing to the formal trade a lot of the actors that doing informal trade on a very small scale. We said that, on the small scale, there is an issue because transportation costs that gives us to the aggregation issues that, you need bigger shipments to have reduced cost when you are going to export. And so moving from informality to formality is something that the AfCFTA can really help here. So I think that makes a difference between existing trade and what we are looking at here. But it's not perfect. There are a lot of things to be changed because otherwise it's not going to take off. If the barriers that we have noticed are still on the ground, then it's going to take some time before trade can really grow. On the sorry, I took notes in a very strange way, but I think the point on the export from out, how we compare the trade within Africa with trade with outside of the continent in terms of what do you have to comply with to be able to export outside of the continent. There are very stringent regulation and standards that you need to comply with. And I think obviously we have not done that here. I think it's something that is very interesting and we should take into consideration. So as we work, as I said, on the bigger manuals, like colleagues have already been done, what we are planning to do, I think that's something we should not overlook. And thank you very much for this, because it's important to also compare how the processes are trading within Africa and with the rest of the world in terms of the constraints that we face. In the case of Tanzania, of course, it's excellent to see the country joining the GTI and trading under the GTI. In the scope of this report, we will not be able to include this because, as I said, it is completed. It's taking a lot of time. You see, I was saying that we were looking at trade in 2022. We are already in early 2024. It was long to interview everyone, to get information, to verify that information, because we cannot publish things that are just coming out of, someone is telling you something and then you have to take it for granted. You have to check. You have to make sure that it's true. So you have to double check, cross. As I was saying, we contacted the customs authority in Ghana to verify that that list of 11 or so taxis is real, and that's really the case. So you need to check every single information to make sure that you don't put on the public domain something that is not accurate. And the re-export, that's an important point. I don't think that was the case here in the way we were, the information we were given from the relevant actors. I don't think that was the issue here, the re-export, but there is indeed a lot of re-export within the continent. And this is something that is tackled through the rules of origin, and maybe you will want to say more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Simon has addressed many of them. Again, I would like also to thank the questions being asked. For the issue on the aggregating companies, with this early stage of the guided trade initiative, or even with the small scale of exporting, from the eastern region to the west, or even within the Western Africa region. What came out clearly was that the volume of those exports were very small, that it was not something that could entice the logistics companies or even the shipping lines or the financiers. So the idea that came with this challenge was, at least if we had an AfCFTA trading company or an aggregator within each state parties, then they will be able to collect these small exports from these small traders, from the SMEs. They could be diverse in terms of type. But the whole idea is, at least they will be, creating the volume which is enough for the shipping lines to take from one point to the other within Africa. You might have heard the story that for some of the exports, it could be tea or coffee from East Africa, that was intended to go to the West Africa, western part of the continent. It first went to Asia. That ship first, it goes to Asia because they still have some space to include from Kenya to Asia, and it's only after they reach Asia that they come back to the western part of the continent. Why? Because for them it doesn't make sense, or in terms of financial aspect, it doesn't make sense for them just to carry those small exports from eastern part to take it all the way to the western part. Financially, they would just be almost impossible to. Maybe they can try one or two times, but it won't happen. So the idea is these aggregators will assist these shipping lines to, it makes so that it can make a business case for the shipping line. So there is no need to go to Asia first. And I had a conversation with one representative from the Kenyan Business Association. He told me that for Kenyan export that they send to the Northern America, perhaps using the AGWA, it takes perhaps 30 to 35 days. But for the same export to reach to the western part of the continent, it will take nearly 2 months, 60 days. And you can imagine what it means for business. Those timings are very important. So the objective is, to have that scale enough for businesses, especially those in the logistics and transportations, to dedicate their services to the AfCFTA without going out from the continent. And that will also enable the financiers also to provide some sort of credit to the logistics companies. And there is also some idea going around to form the AfCFTA shipping lines. So that would be dedicated, going around the continent, carrying the exports from those different state parties. So that is the whole idea. But from the Secretariat side, we have done some concept note on this area. So it will depend on the legal system of each state party, how to form those aggregating companies at national level. Some people, they consider them to be as just a middleman, but given the circumstances and the nature of business that we see now, it could be a good solution, at least to be able to move forward in terms of accessing those markets. So I think that is the point for Tanzania. Yeah, exactly. A very good observation. As far as I remember, Tanzania is a very interesting case. They very quietly, they are doing very impressive exercise under the AfCFTA. At least we have received 12 certificates of origin during last reporting. So that is very impressive. On the re-exporting issue, I think Simon has already touched upon it, but the message the AfCFTA is sending is to create an intra-Africa trade, meaning we would like to use our own resource and then our own markets. So if there is a re-export of goods from one state party to the other, definitely that's not to benefit from the market that's created under the AfCFTA. Of course, if you go through the rules of origin annex, it will tell you in detail that, of course, it starts with wholly obtained, which is something that is produced wholly within the continent that to benefit from the AfCFTA. And there are products which can, go through, some productive processes, processed products, but up to a certain percent. So the message is like, we created this big market within the continent, but we don't mean to be a dumping ground for products that's coming outside the continent. So definitely they are not treated as unless they fulfill the rules of origin that is contained in the AfCFTA agreement. Thank you very much.
Good. I just want to check if there is any further question or comment in the room, but seemingly there is one hand up. We can take it and then go to the conclusion.
Thank you very much. I will be quick and direct. And so in a practical sense, let me bring this to the notice of everyone, and I want clarity. Country A is here to join GTI in a REC. Could export from that country A within that REC to country B allow under the GTI by benefiting on the preferential treatment? That's one. The other side of the coin of the question is country A is here to join the GTI, but want to export to a country in the other REC that is also yet to join. Is it mandamus for those two countries to join the GTI before that trading commences? And then, if you cannot give me a flavor of the third leg, is it compulsory that a country has to join the GTI before you export into another country that has already joined the GTI? Thank you.
So just a response on this last question, and then we go to the conclusion of this session.
Olusegun, that's two very important points. I think they are 4 million with more up to date on the rules of origin. What I would say is that your first example was quite interesting. And I think that may actually go through, in my opinion, based on the criteria. I mean, it may be able to pass. That's what I'm saying. The second one, it's very complicated because you have one that is party, one that is not party. I hope it cannot go through, but Million, maybe you can tell us more.
So thank you again. Maybe I would like to understand the question more clearly. Are you saying, is it compulsory for state parties to trade between themselves to be within the GTI arrangement or being without? Yes, I have very quick answer for that. That's why I said it's a temporary arrangement to guide. But as long as businesses, they have created a B2B or, they have seen the market some places, and that state party, have gone through that readiness in a sense that they have signed, ratified, and of course, the provisional schedule of tariff concessions have been gazetted, for example. They are ready for business. That means, you don't need to go through the other, processes for your product to reach to that destination. So as long as state parties are ready to do business through, their own network, actually that will be less work for the secretariat. So that's most welcome. If I answer your question, otherwise perhaps I need, yeah. All right.
Thank you for your flexibility, because I said the presentation, the substance, you can see how it is giving incentives to deeper discussions. So whoever has additional question may wish to take it bilaterally, because it's now the time to close today's session. But before going there, there is an announcement. We are asking each group to please submit to our team behind over there their presentations they have made in the plenary. We need them for the report. This is one. Now, before we go to the end of this day, we have planned to release you tomorrow at 3 p.m. But the only one way to make it is that we stick on the time, is to start tomorrow 9 sharp. If we make it tomorrow 9 sharp, we'll be able to close at 3 p.m. and allow some probably who haven't visited Nairobi to make a tour before flying back. So we are kindly asking everyone to do the last effort. It is the last day, and be seated here tomorrow 9 sharp. With this, then, I want to thank everyone. Today, you deserve a rest. You have been so active, those who presented, those who discussed, those who have been dealing with reports, yourself who have been active in the breakout sessions and the plenary. The last session showed how you were so interested in these discussions. I want to thank you, everyone, wishing you a wonderful evening, and thank you for your work today. Bye-bye.